Welcome to the Physical Product Movement, a podcast by Fiddle. We share stories of the world's most ambitious and exciting physical product brands to help you capitalize on the monumental change in how, why, and where consumers buy. I'm your host, Ken Ojuka. In this episode, I speak with Richa Gupta, founder and president of Good Food for Good, a Toronto-based brand focused on ketchup, barbecue, and cooking sauces made from fresh, whole, and organic ingredients. She talks about her journey from working for General Mills as a marketing manager for some of the most recognizable product brands to eventually founding her own brand. She talks about how her desire to not only help people eat less sugar and non-food substances, but she also had this deeper desire to just make a bigger impact in the world. She talks about how then she turned these desires into action by whipping up her first products in her kitchen and then took them to a farmer's market and began selling. She tells the story of how a chance conversation with one of her customers at a farmer's market inspired her to create what became her best-selling product. She also shares the exciting news of their retail expansion into Whole Foods in the United States and what that means for her business. This was a fun conversation with a down-to-earth, pragmatic, and inspiring founder. There's a lot to unpack in this episode. I hope you enjoy. All right. Hi, Richa. Thank you for jumping on with us today. I appreciate you taking the time. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you for inviting me, Ken. It's an honor.
Well, great. I look forward to digging into your story and kind of understanding your journey so far. But first, we like to kick it off with a quote. Something that's impactful for you or something that has influenced you in some way. Do you have one in mind?
Absolutely. It's actually even on our office walls. It's called, it's by Mahatma Gandhi, and it's "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And this quote meant a lot to me when I started the company, before that, and even today. It's like everyday decision-making tool for us. So do you want me to, should I continue explaining?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
okay,
I love that quote, first of all, and I just think it's something that we can all take to heart, and instead of, kind of complaining about the things that are wrong in the world is jump in and kind of be that change. But yeah, so how does that apply to you? What specifically have you taken from that and how has that influenced you?
Totally. What I loved about the quote was it talks about individual responsibility, and leadership, and this company, Good Food for Good, was, in a way, my way of bringing that change. So when I started the company, I was working in marketing at a food company at General Mills. And I also had a 4-year-old, my daughter was 4 at that time. I was really struggling to feed my daughter the food that I grew up with. So I grew up in India. My mom cooked 3 times a day, all fresh food. And here I had 20 minutes at the end of the day to feed my daughter dinner and put her to bed because of the time that I would reach home from work. And anytime I looked around to find shortcuts that would make my, feeding her easy, they were loaded with first, a lot of sugar, salts, ingredients that I didn't call food, preservatives. And second, working at General Mills had taught me so much about all these extra ingredients that you see on the panels that are not food, and what they do and why we put them in our body. So that insider information combined with mom guilt was really, really weighing on me. And just this idea behind creating something that not only would make a difference in my life, but also in life of someone else in need came from this concept of, hey, if you can't find it, you be the change, right? If you activate that change, if you're not happy with the status quo. So that's how Good Food for Good began, right? That's the reason why we exist today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And in fact, that mom guilt that you mentioned is a real thing. And, there's also dad guilt. I feel it sometimes too. When, I roll my kids through another drive-through, so I totally identify with that.
Yeah, it's a full-on parent guilt, man. It's like anyone you nurture, right?
Yeah.
Like we created these beings with so much love and care inside of us, and then we bring them out and we feed them things that we know are really not good for them.
Yeah, and you love them, and you'll do anything for them, and yet you run through McDonald's yet again.
Exactly.
I've been kind of entertaining this thought, but I just think convenience is the ultimate feature, in any product or service. And I don't think, as people, we don't put enough thought into that, but just convenience is huge. I mean, the reason I run through McDonald's is not because I want McDonald's or because, that's the only place to eat. It's just, it's so convenient. It's so easy. And so, it ends up being the default choice, So anyway, I've just been thinking about that a little bit.
No, I agree. It is. Our lives have become so busy. I guess the whole, like back in the day, or, even if you look 50 years ago,
mm-hmm.
people had slightly different priorities, or even if they had the same priorities, they just had not so many things asking for their time. So they had time to make a meal and sit down with their family, because 50 years ago, people were still making their meals, or 60 years ago, before a lot of processed food companies came
mm-hmm.
to be. They were still making their meals. They were still eating together. And then, with advent of technology, with advent of so many situations and things grabbing attention of our time, we have very limited time left to actually, focus on things that at the end of the day matter most to us,
right.
For our bodies, right?
Yeah. So let's dig into, I just want to go back in time a little bit, when you were thinking about starting your company. So you'd mentioned that you worked at General Mills. What did you do there?
I was in marketing. I was a brand marketer.
Okay. Any particular products that you could tell us about that you were involved with?
Oh man, so many. During my tenure, I managed Fiber One bars, Fiber One cereal, Oatmeal Crisp. I managed Green Giant, and Old El Paso, which is the last brand that I was on before I left. Yeah.
And so was that something that you had always been interested in, or how did you even get the job and start working at General Mills?
It's an interesting story. So before Gen Mills, I'd worked in fashion all my life. I grew up in India. I think I was in grade 10 that I want to get into fashion. So I studied fashion and got a job as a designer. And during that journey, that journey is also linked to why our business is a social enterprise. It's really funny. And I was 19 when I got my first job. And I think 3 months in, or 3 or 4 months in, probably, my boss asked me to go visit artisans who do all this embroidery or like handwork on these, beautiful, elaborate outfits that we use to create.
Yeah.
And when I reached there, I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, I'll finally meet people who bring what I put on sketch, to this beautiful outfit. When I reached there, I got the shock of my life. They were like at least 20 people in a tiny little room.
Wow.
Sitting around a cot doing the needlework. There was just this gloominess in that room. It was a hot day. There was, just the whole aura was so sad, and just the contrast of these people who were actually doing the work, making these outfits worth thousands of rupees, are living in such really bad circumstances, left a really bad taste in my mouth. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I felt responsible for what they were going through. But at 19, I really didn't know what to do about it.
Right.
or how to go about it. I come from a, really middle class family, we were trying to make ends meet ourselves. But that just left me in shock. And what I did was I just changed my role. Instead of design, I was like, okay, if I continue in design, I would have to see them again and again. Perhaps
Sure.
I can go in business development. At least I'll still be with fashion, but I won't have to witness that. So that's what I did. I moved to business development, worked in that. When I reached Canada, I worked in buying here at Hudson's Bay, which is one of the big retailers here in Canada. But the feeling came back again, right? Like I think I was 30 and pregnant with my daughter when I got this feeling back that, you got to do something more meaningful. Life is not about buttons and threads, which is what it had become. Working in fashion, just the superficialness of apparel and fashion was getting to me. So I decided and I was an immigrant to this country, right? So for me to switch industries, I know I had to go to school. So I did my MBA during my maternity leave, and got a job at General Mills. And I thought, oh, it's food, has to be more meaningful than fashion, right? That's how General Mills happened. And to be honest, like my first year and a half, I really loved everything about General Mills. Cause I was just loving, the company is really good. It really, even as an associate, you are empowered to make decisions, to do things, which is incredible. But when I started learning more about ingredients and what was going in the product and why we were putting things in the product, I just, the feeling came back in again, right? Like I was like, okay, this is not the meaning that I was looking for. I'm not making a positive difference. And again, I am contributing to bad health instead of contributing to good health. So it's that personal tug of war there, and then personal in as a mom tug of war. So
yeah, and that's one of the things I was going to ask you is if maybe some of these feelings increased as you became a parent.
Yeah. Oh my God, so daughter. Much. Totally, okay, yeah. so much. I think there is something to do with once you see the world differently once you become a parent.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's what was happening in my life, right? Instead of being just all by myself, it's about me world, to, hey, I have another person that I need to take care of. And that changed everything. Yeah.
Right. And what kind of world you're leaving behind, for them,
Yeah.
That all starts to become a factor. It's funny exactly. If my single self, when I was back in college and stuff could hear me today, I don't think I'd believe, some of the things that I think and say, because my mind just wasn't there at all back then. It's completely changed as I've become a parent.
Me too. Oh my God. I was a very different person. Like people who knew me, my parents tell me, like, I don't know what happened to you. We like this one, but I don't know.
Well, so let's hear about this. So you're dissatisfied, with your contribution, wondering if there's something more, if there's a better way that you could contribute. So what did you do to then launch, Good Food for Good? How did you, what were your next steps?
So I started, I did my market research, thanks to marketing training at General Mills, on where is the pain point. So I looked at different categories where there was demand, there was white space, I should say, in terms of healthy, real, wholesome food. And I saw at that time, the ethnic cooking sauces like Indian and Mexican sauces were the first things that I launched. There was no product on the shelf that didn't have sugar or really high sodium or, no dairy. They were all loaded with preservatives, had ingredients that you didn't know what they were about. So I started with that line. I started developing recipes in my kitchen, And luckily, I always loved cooking. I always loved food. So that came easy. And then actually for the first year, all I did was go to farmers markets and do lemonade stand pretty much to test is this idea just in my head or is it big enough for me to expand? And it was actually through my farmers markets, I got the product ideas for my next lineups. Our most popular lineup today is our line of organic ketchups and barbecue sauces. They are sweetened with dates, no added sugar. And it was actually one of the consumers who came to me and she's like, my daughter eats everything with ketchup. Can you please do something about it? And that's how we started.
And that got you thinking. So I want to dig into some of this, Richa. So you come with this marketing background, right? As a marketing manager with General Mills. What specifically did you do to try to figure out what the market looked like and what products could do well? And so you mentioned that you did some research, but was there anything specific that you did in order to get that information?
Yeah, it's a few things. One, you look at trends. You read Euromonitor, or even now trends are just freely available everywhere. And if any product category you're looking at, if you search for it, you would know. Like everyone knows clean eating. People want clean ingredients. People want low sodium. People want no sugar. Like those things have become very apparent. People want plant-based alternatives. And then you look at competition. Then you look at what's on the shelf right now. And you see if there is a gap. Like that's the basic research. And even market size information you can get once you like a simple Google search will tell you what's the size of the market. Or you can reach out to government resources. So we have something called OMAFRA in Canada for Ontario manufacturers. You can reach out to them. They buy a lot of data, so you can always ask them, hey, can you tell me the market size of this category? And what's the competitive set? Or you just go to a store and check the competitive set, right?
So did you say OMAFRA? What is it called?
OMAFRA, but that's very Ontario based. That's very Canadian. So in US,
does that stand for something?
You're asking me a difficult question. I have to Google it now. Yes, it does stand for Ontario Manufacturers something, but that something is what I have to find you.
Got it. But the general principle is that they do have some of these organizations that buy a lot of data and supply
Exactly. So it's called Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs.
Just rolls off the tongue, right?
Exactly. That's all. Like it's a MAFRA. That's all that I know.
And so, okay, so you're based in Toronto, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But you would say that there are, these organizations kind of wherever you look, you could find some information there. And so you just called them up and you asked for this. Did you have to pay anything to join their organization, or how did that work?
No. These organizations are started pretty much by governments, right? So they want to help businesses grow. And then they are happy to provide you guidance on, where, how. So I think anybody starting a new business should look at government resources. There's so many, like people just don't, there is no one place where you can find everything. But there are so many free resources. Like we got so many grants from the government to help us with different things. So it's, it's just, you got to look in different places.
Okay. And you'd mentioned also finding the trends. And so some of this marketing data from these government resources, might have some of the trend information, but, you mentioned, plant-based and clean eating. And, if somebody wanted to dig into and learn more about some of these trends, I mean, let's break it down for them. What would you recommend that they do?
To be honest, I start everything with Google research. Google is the tool, and I try and look for sources where they are getting the data from. And if they're reliable sources, like let's say Euromonitor, or it's research paper by an organization, then you know that these are like true sources versus a blog written by anybody, Richa Gupta, right? Again, it's critical thinking, right? Like, don't take any information that's available online as long as you know what to look for. So some of the reliable sources I would say for trends would be, at least in the industry that I am in, would be Euromonitor. If you're looking for tech, I'm sure there are different tech portals that talk about trends in tech. Google Trends is also another great place. Pinterest Trends is also another great place to look for what is it that people are talking about, what is it that people are looking for, and taking it from there.
Right. Yeah. And I think those are some great resources. Thank you for expanding on that a little bit. I also wanted to touch into, you went to farmers markets. Was that intentional from the beginning? Did you know that that's what you were going to do, or did you just try it and it seemed to be working, so you continued to do it? What was your feeling about farmers markets?
Yeah, no, I really wanted. That was part of the business plan because working at the mills, I learned whenever we did these focus groups, the information that you got out of there was just like, I felt it was unreliable when you're paying these people to think about things that they normally don't think about. And then your answers are all influenced by the money exchange. So I wanted to create an atmosphere where I am making my decision based on how consumers are actually consuming the product, or whether they're buying X flavor or not. When they come, and the interaction that I have with them on week over week over week taught me about what are they liking, what are they not liking, and which direction I need to go in.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's a trend that we see. I think it's always a good idea to go in front of potential customers, right? And whether that's at a farmer's market or in some other way, but somebody who would actually have to reach into their pocket and buy from you, that's like the best data that you can get.
Exactly. Like how, it's again, people say more different things than what they actually do. So judge them on what they do. I mean, take the information on what they actually do, because they're more likely to do it versus on what they say.
Right. So I kind of want to paint the picture of this first farmer's market that you went to. What was the product? And I guess you set up a table, and then what happened?
Yeah, it is so funny. You're taking me back, and I'm getting nostalgic about it now. So I started the company in September of 2013 is when, that was our test mode. And I was just calling different farmers market to see if I can get, because I live in Toronto, right? In winter, usually there aren't many farmers markets, that I could get a spot in the summer farmers market next year. However, this one market, they said, hey, I have a spot starting October. It's an indoor farmers market. Would you like to join? I'm like, oh, I don't even have the products yet. I don't even know where I'll take it. But let's sign up, right? And then we'll see what happens. So anyhow, I signed up and we reached there. And then at that time, I had I made them in a mason jar. So I rented a commercial kitchen, because you can't really make it out of your house. And so made the product, packaged them in mason jars, put like a hand tag somewhere. I should have a picture of that. Handwritten hand tag, a tiny printed label, like really well crafted, according to me at that time, thing, a small banner. And then, went there. My husband was so supportive. He drove me there, set up a table. And then we just waited, and I was so nervous. I'm like, oh my God, is anybody going to buy it? What will people think? Because even in farmers market, right, it's not a very multicultural crowd that comes to farmers market. It's even the products. Most of the products that you get at farmers market are usually just vegetables or jams and jellies. So it was a very unique product for the farmers market as well. And then I didn't know how
just to
many.
be clear, what was the product? Was it ketchup or was it something else?
No ketchup. So it was Indian cooking sauces, Mexican cooking sauces, and I had 3 dips as well. So
Okay. All right.
yeah. So again, and 3 new to the world dips that nobody had heard of. So it was a very very interesting experience. A lot of consumer education, a lot of talking, a lot of smiling. I took a picture of the person who bought the first jar. Actually, she bought it even before the market opened.
Really?
Yeah.
Like she just was in early or?
Yeah, she was in early and then she tasted. She's like, yeah, I'll take this. I'm like, oh my God, I made one sale. Someone bought what I made. I was so happy.
and what were you charging for a jar of this? Like what was that one sale worth for you?
I think it was $7.
And was that a good price? Was that, you increased your prices since then, or what did you learn about, the prices that you initially went out with?
A little bit, because at that time I didn't account for the distribution markup, the broker markup, the retailer markup. So yeah, it went out not by a lot. It's just went up by $1. So it's
sure.
Yeah. So it's
sure.
Just also about $8.
And a lot of people, early on, you're not necessarily trying to make a profit, with that farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can optimize all that later. The more valuable part is getting the data and understanding, directly from the consumers, what they like, what's resonating, what's not, all of that. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally. I mean, I think first few years, I don't know any brand that made any money. so it's not just when you're launching, like it's just hard to make money when you're so small, like at that scale.
Right. Okay. So you got some initial feedback, I guess what was that feedback? And then what did you take back to then change your product and start iterating?
Yeah. So we did as we went along. So if at the first market or second market, if people tried certain products, they found certain things too spicy or certain things not too spicy, I was able to change the recipes for the next round, right? And bring them out and then get them to try again. Another thing that we learned was, so at my farmer's market, my dips did incredibly well because it's just convenience, right? They're all bean based, so they had protein, and people can just dip their vegetables and eat it, and that becomes a meal. Versus cooking sauces require cooking. So when we launched that in retail, because they were so new to the world and their shelf life was so short and they were fresh, they tanked. So a learning that I didn't take from there, like in farmer's market, I was standing there, people were sampling and then they were buying. So I was able to explain to them what the product was. In a retail store, that doesn't happen, right? You can do 1 demo, you can do 2 demo, but you can't be standing there all day long at every store to tell people what it was for them to buy. So unless people know or can understand from the name what the product is, it's very difficult for it to work in the current retail landscape. The way people buy things. So it was important for it to, there's a reason why Beyond Meat calls it there's a meat analog to it, right? Because if they say, hey, pea burger or extruded pea burger, nobody would understand that, right?
Right. So they need a frame of reference for something they're familiar with to then bridge to your product.
Exactly.
So on your website today, you guys sell cooking sauces, and so maybe that could be a good example. It's not something that is, like you were saying, was readily there for them to sample, so they didn't necessarily do that great at the farmer's market. How did you actually then start? I guess how did you start selling that, and how did you solve that issue that you were having in the retail environment where there wasn't anybody there to explain your product?
No, so different things. So cooking, we don't even have those dips anymore. So what I was talking about, the product that didn't do well in retail, and we actually discontinued it. So you will not even find that on our website.
Okay.
The cooking sauces did fine. The dips just did better in farmer's market because it was just a more convenient item for people versus a cooking sauce. They had to go home and cook. With dip, you just take and eat.
Okay, so based on on what you heard from farmers markets, you were thinking that the dips would be great in retail, but the learning
Yeah,
was okay. The convenience of the farmers market made it so dips did well.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly. Yeah, that was the
okay.
learning.
Well, great. This I'm intrigued by that story of your customer that recommended that you use dates or that you do something about it. Did you already have in mind that you wanted to add dates to it, or was that
Yeah,
something you were already looking at?
yeah, we were already using dates in our cooking sauces. So the
Okay.
reason I was using dates to begin with was when in my research, um, all the sugar alcohols that I looked into, any sugar alternative that I looked into, had some or the other, negative impact on your body eventually, right?
Hmm.
After you consume certain quantity, or in kids, it can do this, it can have this side effect. And I was creating products for families. I didn't want to use anything that in long run would have a negative impact on people. So dates have existed forever, right? Like people have eaten them in different countries for centuries, with zero side effects.
Right.
uh, so that's why dates became my sweetener of choice, and because it's like a whole fruit, and we use it as a whole fruit. We don't use date extract or date sugar. It's just like date not even powdered, ground up date, right? Like if you put date in the blender, that's what we use. You get the fiber, and anytime you're eating fiber with sugar, your body absorbs sugar slowly, so it doesn't really spike your blood sugar level that much. And also, we use such small quantities. So our ketchup, for example, has only 1 gram of sugar per serving, versus a Heinz that has 4 grams of sugar per serving, coming from corn syrup,
Hmm.
or sugar, plain sugar, right? Which actually is the same amount as one Chips Ahoy cookie.
Wow.
And yeah, and barbecue sauces are even worse. Like Sweet Baby Ray has 17 grams of sugar per serving. 17
Yeah.
grams. And do you know how much sugar is in one Krispy Kreme donut?
I don't think I want to know.
10 grams. 10 grams. So
Wow.
two
So
tablespoons of Sweet Baby Ray
it has more. Yeah. Wow.
sugar than a Krispy Kreme donut. And how many times we say, oh, no to donut, but we have our barbecue chicken or barbecue tofu, which is probably worse than that donut that you would have enjoyed, at least gotten that sweet tooth satisfaction.
Well, I've been doing keto for a few years, and so it's kind of taught me to look at the amount of sugar in all the foods, and it's
Right.
amazing. That's the hardest part of keto is just trying to steer clear of sugar because everything has a ton of sugar.
Totally. I totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking at your barbecue sauces right now. I'm on your website and I'm drooling a little bit because one of my issues with barbecue sauce is that most of them are too sweet. So I
Yeah.
totally get that. I want a good flavor, but I don't necessarily need it to taste like I'm eating a dessert or something.
Totally, right? Like you need good flavor. You don't need all that sugar. And if you need sugar, you have a dessert. Don't
Right.
waste it on, your main course. Like even WHO says, right? Like 60 spoons of added sugar is max you should eat, for body to function well. And if have only 60 spoons to eat, I would rather have it in something that gives me that sweet satisfaction at least. Yeah,
Right.
versus my main course.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. I want to talk just a little bit about where your business is now, right? So how long ago was that you started the business, and then maybe tell us about the evolution of the company since then.
Totally. So it was September of 2013 when I registered the company, and then we were keeping it very local, very small till about 2017. I was only using fresh, local, organic tomatoes. And that was limiting how I could scale, because in Ontario, you only get fresh, local, organic tomatoes in summer. Um, because we live in the country that we live in, Canada.
Yes.
You don't, I'm not in California. So I was, at that time, I was like very hell-bent on and then, 3 years in, I realized there is no way I can make this business sustainable if I continued to be at that scale. So I made a decision, and I did a lot of research. And I found organic tomato paste is like the cleanest tomato product because it does not have, so if you buy canned tomatoes, they usually have calcium chloride or some other preservative to preserve the shape. If you buy puree, they usually have something they add to preserve the color, but tomato paste is just tomatoes. So tomato paste became our savior and the reason why we were able to expand everywhere from 2017 onwards. Now we are available in Canada, all across Canada, from Costco to Walmart to Loblaws, all major channels. Of course, Whole Foods was our first customer. We just actually launched in US at Whole Foods Market.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. So we are now available at Whole Foods nationally. Our cooking sauces as well as our ketchups and barbecue sauces. So super excited about that people can find our products there. And I know this is going to be the year when we can say that we donated 1 million meals. So one thing I didn't mention about our product is the company is called Good Food for Good. Good food is all about, real wholesome food. But for good is also extremely dear to my heart. And I told the story earlier, but forgot to tell what the for good stands for. So our company is a buy one, feed one venture. So every time you buy our product, we feed a person in need. So we are roughly at 800,000 meals donated.
Wow.
Yeah. So hopefully in a couple of months, we should get to 1 million. And, that would be a good, what's the right word to use? Landmark? No. Is it called landmark?
Milestone.
Milestone. Yes, milestone. That'll be a milestone that I've been waiting for.
Yeah, well, 800,000 is not so bad either. That's inspiring. That's awesome. Can you tell us just a little bit about the way that you actually do these meals, and I guess what inspired it? What was the motivation behind setting up the company that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely the thing that had been haunting me since I was 19 was to do something for people who are not as fortunate as some of us. It's been haunting me since I was 19, then started haunting me when I was working. And when I was doing my MBA, actually, I discovered Tom's shoes. And that just stayed with me. I knew, and even my business plan, actually, in my MBA, I did a social enterprise, and my entrepreneurship lecturer told me this is the first social entrepreneurship plan ever that he's gotten in the school at that time. Yeah. I'm sure there are many new social entrepreneurs since then, but that was the plan. And then I knew if I would ever do something of my own, it would have that component. So when the good food idea came to be, I had to make sure that it's part of it from day one. And we made sure it's part of it from day one. And our name, actually, Good Food for Good, not only is our name, it's our promise to the world, but it's also like our decision-making tool. So anytime we have to make a decision, people ask us, hey, why don't you have plastic squeeze bottles? All ketchups come in plastic squeeze bottles. It makes it. So I'm like, no. I mean, we know what happens to plastic, right? Like only 9% gets recycled. Everything ends up in a landfill. I don't want to create a product that at some point is causing harm to some other, it's not a band-aid solution. Like I want a company that's sustainable in all aspects, whether it's good for you, good for planet, good for, people around, good for people who are not fortunate. That's what I set out to do. So our decision-making tool is pretty simple.
Yeah, that's great.
Is it for good? Is it good food? If not, it's not happening.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I know that we've been talking for a while, and even before we started recording, me and you just started talking. So I know we could talk for a long time. But I do appreciate hearing about your story, and congratulations on the U.S. launch. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And I definitely want to hear and kind of read your posts when you guys hit 1 million meals served. I think that's great.
Thank you.
Let's wrap up with a quick fire round. I've just got 4 questions for you, and just want to hear kind of the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
What's one tool or resource that has helped you the most in your current career?
LinkedIn.
Yeah, I would actually agree. That's mine too. What's one book that you'd recommend to people?
Start Something That Matters.
And do you know who that's by?
Yeah, Blake Mycoskie. And actually, can I recommend 2 books?
Sure.
21 Lessons for 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely look those up. What is one piece of advice that you would give to your 21-year-old self?
I would tell the 21-year-old self to not be scared. I wish I had taken steps back then on my calling, which has made me so happy when I finally was able to act on it. So I wish I did something about it at 21.
And is there somebody in your field of work that you look up to, or that you're watching, that you would love to take to lunch?
Oh my God. Yes. I remember. How can I am pathetic at his last name. I'm really bad, but Yuval, he founded Patagonia. And I am terrible saying his last name, so I'm not going to say that because I'm going to butcher it.
That's okay. We can look him up.
Oh, not Yuval. Sorry. Yuval, not Yuval. Yuval Harari also I would like to take lunch too. But Yuval, and his last name is, I'll not say it, Chouinard. I'm saying it wrong. Most likely saying it wrong. But yes, I would like to. If I learn how to say his name, I would like to take him for lunch.
Yeah, maybe before you sit down and start eating, you should figure out how to pronounce his last name.
I should do that. Yes.
Well, Richa, this has been great. I appreciate that. Is there any sort of parting advice that you would leave to other entrepreneurs that are running physical product businesses? What would your advice be?
It's in a physical product business, especially in physical product business, there's so many moving parts that it's very difficult to always be an expert in everything. So I would say just reach out to people, just ask those questions. Don't be scared to ask questions. People in entrepreneurial world, at least I found, are very helpful. It's like an invisible net that comes and helps you reach your goals that you didn't had when you were working for a corporation.
That's awesome. And that is a great place to end. Hey, Richa, thank you so much. And I definitely want to reach out to you again. I'd love to spend a little bit more time talking about cause marketing and, kind of setting up your company like you did. I think that there's a whole episode just on that alone. So we'll definitely be in touch. Anytime,
Ken. Anytime.
The Physical Product Movement Podcast is brought to you by Fiddle. To find out more about Fiddle and how our industry-leading inventory ops platform is giving modern brands and manufacturers full visibility into their inventory and operations, visit fiddle.io. And then make sure to search for Physical Product Movement in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Fiddle, thanks for listening.